Hello and welcome to this, the second in a growing library of conversations about getting into business, the motivations for it, the lessons to be learnt from getting into business, and going forward, how to make the most of it. My guest is Richard Osborne from Business Data Group. Richard, we're moving on from your personal story, which we talked about in our first conversation. You used the setting up of your own business as a kind of route out of a very difficult childhood, and also through the years of your young adulthood person. You've had a number of businesses. What kind of businesses did you begin with, and why?
The first company that I set up, and when I did that, I actually didn't know what a company was. So Steve, who was my boss, my employer at the time, he took care of getting the company set up, as I now know through his accountant. His accountant set it up for him. But I was dabbling with computers, quite techie as an individual. Everything that I was doing, which I mentioned when we were speaking before, was just falling apart within my job that I was doing. It felt poison chalice. Everything I touched just fell apart. I couldn't imagine working for anybody else. The thought of even trying to find a job or go to an interview, just anything about that, I couldn't do it. So the obvious thing seemed to be to start a company that was doing website design. I'd started dabbling on building some websites. I could do it. I'd built up a couple of websites for people I knew. My aunt and uncle had their own business. I built the website for them. And Steve, I told him that I had to leave, and told him what I was thinking of doing. And he put some money on the table. He offered to put some money into the business bank account.
To get you started with your own business?
To get me started,
okay.
Yeah. And he came into the business as a shareholder, as a business partner, and we set up a company called Netratech. Very weird, trying to think of a name, but it was made up of the word net, where it starts, into net, row, Richard Osborne, technology. So internet technology, just shove my initials in the middle, try and come up with a name that the domain name existed.
So this was very much one man and his band, but you had an investor, you had somebody that would steer you down the right path and perhaps help you financially at the same time. How much was setting up your own business a reaction to perhaps not wanting to be the employee of somebody else, or having difficulties being employed by somebody else, and that having been influenced by your experiences as a child and as a young adult growing up?
It felt like the only thing I could do. The thought of, I didn't think there was anything that I could do. I'd been working for Advance all my working life. It was all I really knew. Sounds crazy. It was only 8 years, and 8 years seems like such a small window of time now, being a little bit older than that. But I couldn't imagine anything else. There was no other job out there that I thought I could do. I didn't believe I could get another job. Whether I could or not, I just didn't try it. I didn't have the confidence to apply for any other jobs to do or try something else. The whole concept of that scared me. It just weirdly felt like the only thing I could do was to just start my own business.
So you started with the help of effectively what we would call a business angel now. Yeah. People who go into business might be very good at the business of doing the business. In your case, web design. It might be motorcycle manufacture or maintenance of some description, or being a plumber. The notion of actually running a business and being profitable from the process of running a business, that's an entirely different set of skills. Yeah. So who kept you on the right path with those? Or were you innately a businessman by birth?
I very quickly realised it's not as easy as it seemed. I just thought that the internet was starting to become a thing in the 1990s. That's when this was, late 90s. People will just pay me loads of money. I'll build them a website, and that's money that I got in. The actual raising invoices and getting paid hadn't even occurred to me. Finding your accounts at Company's House was completely alien to me. Running your finances, marketing, I didn't even. It's sort of sounds stupid saying it, but I just thought I'll just start doing it, and people will find me, and I'll just start getting business from it. Everything was alien there, and it was a very, very steep learning curve, and although the business ticked along, it did struggle. It didn't progress. I didn't have the knowledge that I wanted, and in hindsight, the relationship from going to boss and employee to business partners didn't work as well as it could have done. The hindsight is a wonderful thing, and now I have non-exec directors, I have investors. I understand the relationship. I understand the roles and responsibilities of each of us.
And maintaining those relationships.
I didn't understand that. And dare I say, Steve, his name, I would have been his very first non-exec role. So it was a learning curve for him. If we had our time again, it'd be very different. And if I had my time again as a business, it'd be very different as well.
Netrotech was the starting point for, let's call it a business empire, because you've had a number of businesses, you continue to have a number of businesses. You've said you've got investors, you've got partners, you've got employees as well. Were you conscious of learning on the job, or were you conscious of, frankly, trying to get the money in to be able to keep a roof over your head? Because again, if you've got a consciousness about how business works and what you're making out of it, that gives you direction for the future.
It was very much autopilot during that time. It was because I'd gone from a well-paid job with a company car and expenses account and high position in the business I was in, to just trying to pay the mortgage. And it was anything. I would literally just set up a website to do this, try this. And I was trying to program solutions, which I weren't sure if there's a problem or not there. There was one thing which I did hit on, which was like a gold mine at the time. And that was creating a website where people could register domain names in bulk. Unheard of at the time. Whenever a business needed a domain name, you'd get a domain name, and if you was in the UK, it would be a whatever.co.uk. And it'd usually be IT companies. If they were setting up your computers in your office, they would say, right, we'll set your computers up for you, we'd set you up with email, and then which domain name do you want? Choose one. And somebody had sold, I can't remember what domain name it was. It wasn't Coca-Cola, it was some high profile domain name. Somebody had sold a domain name for thousands and thousands. So suddenly people wanted to do this. So I wrote a program that allowed people to register a whole load of domain names online, and using search engine optimization, which was really easy back then. Google wasn't around. So my website was #1 on Excite, #1 on Yahoo, #1 on Alta Vista for the term domain names. And for a period of time, it was like printing money. I'd fall asleep and I'd wake up in the morning thousands of pounds richer. It wasn't to last though, because Boo went bust. A lot of people had domain names taken from them that they'd bought thinking they could sell for thousands for breach of copyright. And then straight away we were inundated, I mean absolutely mobbed with clawbacks from credit cards saying I didn't authorise this transaction. And all the thousands that went into the bank account were being ripped out of the bank account.
Netrotech was your first foray into business. Where did it take you, and what was next in the chain?
The business, Netrotech was ultimately sold, but I use that term loosely because the deal wasn't what I actually thought it could have been. But we ran that for a couple of years. I then ended up working for another company, but I was there for a year, did a lot whilst I was there, and quite a lot of sort of IT restructuring, and sort of learned a lot of things. And one of the projects I looked after, the BT network was just unbundling at the time, and I project managed a whole setup of a telecom system with Oftel as they were at the time, getting numbers set up and setting up a whole telecoms operation. Quite some big jobs along with other things. During that time whilst I was there, my daughter was born, and I was leaving home at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, because it was about a 4 hour drive to work. And then I was leaving work about 6, getting home at about 10, 11, and then I would just sleep. And it became really difficult, not just for my own mental health and just exhaustion, but my daughter didn't know my scent. Literally, by the time I actually ended up leaving there, my daughter was 6 months old, and I couldn't hold her.
I'm intrigued to hear you say that you took a job with somebody, particularly given your previous experiences. You'd gone down the route of having your own business, Netrotech got sold off, then you took a job with somebody and found that it wasn't to your liking. Didn't you think that was going to happen all along?
No.
Why not?
When I took that job, there was potential opportunities that were put in front of me that didn't go the way that that I thought they would. And it wasn't the kind of setup that I felt comfortable working in. And you add to that the commute and my daughter being born, everything just added together. This isn't working. The thought of going for another job still didn't appeal to me. I think it's the actual applying for a job, perhaps. The
Having to sell yourself.
having to sell myself, that might be it. But I knew I could do a bit of web programming. So I left that job, had a very emotional farewell. I've never experienced anything like it, where there were members of staff who worked for this organisation who were very upset that I was leaving, literally tears, and I just did not expect any of that. But it was, quite an emotional farewell.
And a lesson in its own right. So from that point of having responsibility, having a team, still being involved in the high-tech world, which would have come from Netrotech, were you then to be re-employed by somebody else, or did you go back down the entrepreneurial owner-operator?
I went down. I set up as a sole trader, as a Aussie IT. Just something I could literally think of, and it was a case of, I don't care what it is, I'm just going to do something, any opportunities to generate some income. Jack of all trades, I looked after the IT networks for some design agencies. I got back into web development, search engine optimization, anything that I could, using any contacts that I'd built up over the past few years. And then I was actually to the side of that, was in the process of creating a online company formation platform. I'd had my eyes open to that was a potential opportunity as I was in that 12 months employment. So I used somebody I'm still in contact now, a contract developer who helped build that and put that together. I was trying to earn some money as much as I could. We took out a bank loan to have a conservatory built.
You're not talking hybrid working by any chance here, are you?
Let's just say the conservatory wasn't built.
Okay.
But it was money to use to sort of pay and sort of fund some as we were building up quick formations and just to pay the mortgage. And everything came together, but it all there was a point where I thought, what am I doing? I'm like ruining, because my daughter's first birthday, we had no money at all.
You'd ploughed everything into the business.
Ploughed everything into the business. When I say business, sorry, the business was ploughing everything into the business for quick formations. The quick formations had been launched in the December. We had our first order on the Christmas Eve, a company called FOD Limited, still remember it. The business was over trading, as in quick formations was, and I'd never heard of that concept before. But to explain, basically, we were getting so many orders. We were setting up 150 companies a day. I say we, it was just me working from my kitchen. And we couldn't get credit. So we were paying Overture before Google Ads come along. Google was just starting off there, but MSN or Microsoft was the main search engine at the time. We were paying for online advertising. I was paying a contractor to do some of the stuff that I couldn't do myself. We were paying in advance to Companies House for the companies to be registered. Plus I still had a mortgage to pay, and we still had to put food on the table. The nappies are very expensive. They literally, I have a daughter. And it got to the point on her first birthday, we literally had nothing to even buy her a first birthday present, to buy a cake or anything like that. And my mother-in-law brought round cakes. She brought round some little gifts and things for her to unwrap. And laid on my daughter's first birthday, and I felt so shit. Literally, if you know, the dad, the father, my role is to provide. My role is to make sure my family have a roof over their head, have food, and can have a first birthday. And I remember sitting there, we're in the garden, and we had a party going on. My little daughter was there, and I just thought, this isn't working. Something's not right here. I didn't know. I couldn't work it out why it wasn't right, because we were getting so many orders in, but we were just having no money. And by this point, I had 3 credit cards that I was trying to pay the minimum payments on. The loan was done. And I'd worked out that I had about 1 week before I was effectively bankrupt, had nothing. So the next day I went down to the bank, and the bank we were with at the time, NatWest, and I turned around and I had all these spreadsheets that I put together saying, look, this is all the orders coming in every day. This is how much revenue we're generating every day. Here's our streamline or card acquiring account. So all our money was going into this card acquiring account, but because all the banks had been massively stung by the .com boom and all the chargebacks, anything that was trading online was high risk. So none of that money was being released into the business bank account for me to pay the bills. So I had £46,000 sat in this reserve that the bank was, every time one of my customers was paying, was holding on to. So I sat down with the bank and said, look, there's all this money sat in here. Okay, I get high risk, you need to hold on to it, whatever, but literally I have 5 days left and I then have nothing. I can't pay my mortgage, I can't pay for it, I literally have nothing. And they said, no, sorry, can't help you. And I sat there, and I'm going to get emotional again. It's in Luton Centre, and when NatWest is on this corner opposite is Barclays, and I walked out, and I just thought, I looked up in the air, I was like, I have nothing. I don't know what to do. As if I sort of looked up, and as if like the eagle of Barclays just opened opposite on the other side of the courtyard, and I just thought, got nothing to lose. So I walked it over there, and I just said, can I speak to a business manager, please? And somebody come along, and I just said, look, I've just been over NatWest, that's who I bank with. And I was very sort of just dejected. I wasn't like trying to sell. I just thought, this is everything. This is how many orders I'm getting every day. This is how much money. I need some money because I have nothing left by the end of this week, and this is sat here. And the guy turned round straight away, said, right, well, we'll sort you out a temporary loan to get you up and going there. We'll set you up with Barclays Merchant Services, get your account set up there. You can you can get your car payments going through there, and we'll sort out 3-day settlement for your payments. I was like, do what? And he was like, we'll get all that sorted, get all that done. Let's get the forms done. Filled them all in. I then, the next day, emailed NatWest, say we're closing the account, moving to this. And then about a week later, that when I closed the WorldPlay account, Streamline, all that it was just over 50,000 by that time, was just transferred straight into the Barclays account. So I'd literally had about a 50 grand boost to the business overnight. And it was at that exact point, I just put all of it, well, not all of it, but loads of it into the promotional activities, and the business just skyrocketed overnight, just completely changed it. And that was the changing point for Quick Formations.
Richard, that's quite some story about cash flow and timing that you've just outlined. Timing was very much a thing because your business had arrived on scene at exactly the right time to capitalize on a relatively undeveloped market. But now others were starting to get into the market. There were other lessons to be learnt as well. You are now the head of Business Data Group. But before that, the business now had various iterations, and they were very much geared towards helping other people to get into business.
Yeah, so when so I had Quick Formations, and Quick Formations, its whole purpose was to create companies for people starting up. And around that same sort of time, I was still working on my own at home. I had no peers to talk to, apart from my wife, I say. Had various challenges, questions. I'd never been out on any networking or anything like that. And from the tech industry, when I worked in tech, that industry was very supportive of each other through things like news groups or email distribution groups and forums. So I thought there must be, maybe there's an opportunity or something for a business forum type thing where business owners, people like me, I can't be the only person sat home on my own thinking, what am I doing? So did a bit of searching and met a guy called Gary who had just literally been thinking the same thing, and just the prior week put together, using some off-the-shelf software, a website which was UK Business Forums. Had a chat with him and I said, look, I'm setting up lots of people in business. These people are going to be in the same sort of situation. I'll put UK Business Forums and market it and put it in front of all these people. You just keep the website running. And that's what we did. So the two of us, over a period of about a year, were together keeping UK Business Forums running until 2005, where I'd just moved to Northampton, and he contacted me and said, look, I'm busy doing my own thing. You're doing all the marketing. You're great. You're basically running the forums. Do you want to have them outright? I was like, okay. And it's one of those times where I've actually spent a load of money and my wife was supportive of it. So did a deal. I acquired full rights of UK Business Forums, and then straight away gave them a bit of a rebrand, started doing some advertising, promotion, and grew them from there.
You and Gary together proved the concept of what others have now subsequently bought into.
Yeah.
What do the UK Business Forums actually interest themselves in? Because there will be people watching this now who aren't members of UK Business Forums and are intrigued in terms of what this tribalism, what these various groups do together.
It's more than one thing, really. And if you imagine a social media platform like whether it's Twitter or Facebook or anything, it's extreme, it's a constant, and if you're not there at the moment, the message is gone. and it's not very easy. It's not an easy platform for you to get answers to questions. It's great for on the spot. What's happening now? You know, is there a protest? Is there a news event, an earthquake that's happened this morning? That's great. But if you have a challenge or an issue in your business and you want to ask that question, if you used to ask that question on a platform where things are scrolling by so quickly, your message is gone.
Right.
Where the way that UKBF works is you ask your question, and then in people's own time, they check in, view a structured platform of questions and answers, and say, oh, this is what you need, that's what you need. And then it lends itself to a discussion around finding the best solution. Then add to that sort of search engine position, marketing, Google search results. All these questions and answers are out there in the world, and everybody has the same sort of challenges in business. So you'll find somebody asking a question that you've got in your mind. They've already asked that question 6 months, 6 years ago, or anything like that, and sometimes the answers are still relevant today. So it's just a massive library. It's got nearly 200,000 pages of questions and answers on there already. Some of them are repeated, obviously, but it's just a huge library that you can digest in your own time.
And this very much plays to the much used phrase that the British economy is based on a series of shopkeepers, or in the real world, small businesses, smaller businesses, not massive great corporates. And with the world that we now have, perhaps that economy, as never before, is going to be predominantly dependent on smaller businesses, the ability to talk about shared experiences, the ability to talk about shared difficulties, which brings us right back to you starting out in business in the first place with your only other partner being your wife, and an investor in the background. And lots of businesses will be like that. How much of the success that you've seen in the businesses that you've had up to this point in your life, which is 2005, 2006, so we're not yet into the crash of 2008, how much of that was down to timing, and how much of that was being fleet of foot, which a small business can be, and perhaps a larger business has more difficulty being?
I'd say around this time, Quick Formations was winning a lot of awards. I'm literally, when I say win, with first place trophies, fantastic publicity. That was down to timing. The company's house had just launched an electronic gateway. The government was starting its digital agenda to put all of its services online for people to use electronically. And just being in the right place at the right time meant that I was able to get a product out to market almost too soon, because I'd get a lot of inquiries from people in the early 2000s saying, is this a real company? Because the concept was setting up a company took weeks, lots of form filing, and there was me saying you can do it on this website, and boom, it's done. So being there right at the start was great for Quick Formations. The UKBF, that was, I'd say, also just at the sort of before the social media. I mean, the word social media hadn't even been bounded around at that time, but UKBF is a social media platform. So that benefited hugely from the internet becoming more readily available. When we started, you'd connect to the internet using a dial-up modem with all the beeps and whistles and things.
Sure. Yeah, I remember.
So internet was becoming more commonplace in the home, and networking online was gradually starting to take off. So yeah, absolutely, timing for those just worked for it. Going forward, I think as Business Data Group grows, you're constantly having to look for what the new trends are and adapting. Even now, I'm jumping way ahead now to sort of today, but I'm fast approaching 50. The younger generation of entrepreneurs who are coming through will consume information differently to how I will. So as a business owner, I have to accept that my way of doing things isn't necessarily on trend. Some things might be, some won't.
Okay, you're right. We have jumped a long way forward. Let's jump back because we can talk about the future in another conversation. Let's jump back a little bit to UKBF. You'd got a business which people wanted to be part of. You'd got other businesses that were winning awards. You knew how to run business by this stage through a process of development, certain amount of trial and error, which is what small business does. That's how it's thrashed out and moves forward. We were just about to hit the crash in 2008, and the tech market, the tech area, got particularly hard hit. What was the effect on you?
So the sort of two things happened in quick succession there for me. So UKBF had been growing significantly. It was even getting coverage in magazines, and the media, TV publishers were using, producers were using UKBF to recruit.
So it was building credibility too?
Yeah.
Okay. Doing its own networking.
It was, yeah. The brand was right out there, and I was getting phone calls or emails from like people who like, "Oh, you're telly," and it was really cool. And then just to New Year's Day 2007, my mother and father-in-law come and visit us. They'd moved to Northampton, couldn't get rid of them. And so my mother-in-law was in our living room. She was saying, "Look, I'm going to go home, lay down. I've got a bit of a headache. It's like really like, yeah, she's feeling a bit rough." So they went home, and then literally like an hour or two later, we got a phone call from my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law had collapsed from a brain hemorrhage. And so they rushed into hospital, and she never came out, and that was really tough. And the start of that year there was no way of, it was just really difficult. And then weeks later, so after the funeral, just a few weeks after the funeral, we had 3 companies interested in buying UKBF from us. And so I'm sitting there, I'm not really back at work. My wife is distraught, as you can imagine. And I just, we weren't really knowing where to go. And everything just felt right just to sell UKBF. It wasn't something that would literally out to. And I do wonder if that was sort of like a parting gift from my mother-in-law, if there is such a thing, of literally just make sure you're okay here. So we ended up selling UKBF.
Was it a rebalancing for you as a businessman who knew how to set up businesses and to make those businesses work? But at the end of the day, you're just a guy, you're just a bloke, and business has to be put in a certain position, in a certain place within the pecking order of what's important.
Initially, it did think like that. There was a few things that Pauline, mother-in-law, said, I want to go to Disneyland, and she never got around to do that. And as a family, we made a point. We went to Disney. We took the kids, just to make sure that things that you don't put things off. So there is that mentality. But then the credit crunch hit, and I had this windfall come in, and I took some family out on holidays. I bought a nice car. We moved house, so we'd spent a chunk of it, and then the rest of it we put into the business. And I ended up upscaling, bringing some staff in, recruited our first actual developer, so it wasn't myself doing all the development work. And me. I then created a separate company which was called e-filing, and we transferred all the intellectual property. So it's the technology that was Quick Formations, because companies were looking at competing with Quick Formations. Quick Formations, as I said, was winning all these awards and was high profile now. So I figured, if they're going to compete with me, why don't I give them the technology and take a little bit of revenue off the back of it? So we created a company called e-filing, transferred all the technology out of quick formations into e-filing. Ultimately, a little bit later, sold quick formations, and it's still a customer of ours today under new ownership. And focused on the technology aspect of what was quick formations. So all that investment had been put in.
And were these businesses effectively running themselves, or were you working
I was
18 hours a day and thinking, I need to bring people in because I can't do this all on my own? Because that too is a business learning, which I'm sure applies to perhaps the businesses that will be watching this today.
it was a bit of both. So I was still running 100 miles an hour, but I was trying to bring staff in and grow the business so that it wasn't all just me. However, all the media was talking about the collapse of the banks, and I was thinking, well, that won't affect us. People, businesses still set up, and then it just went off a cliff. Literally, just everything just stopped, and I put everything into the business itself. So I just sold UKBF, had a nice windfall, and it was done. And what I started doing was paying the staff's wages from my own bank account. We just put all the money we had into the business account and then paid it out from there. And I was thinking, we'll get through this. It'll be all right. And it got to a point where it was December 2008, if I remember correctly, and we had not enough money to pay the staff wages.
So this is again a lesson in cash flow.
Yeah, it took me a little while to learn this lesson. There was no money, so my wife and I, with our now 2 little kids, walked over to the park, and I was sitting there thinking, we've literally got nothing. We can't even pay ourselves. We can't pay anybody. There's no money left at all. Saying it's lonely at the top, and it really is, because you don't talk through with your team these things, your staff. It's your responsibility. They look to you to make sure they get their wages every month. So I phoned a friend of mine who had been through a pretty tough time earlier. He'd been bullied within a work environment. He was, and I'd helped him a bit through there at the time. Not that I remembered it, I just remembered that he was doing all right now. And when I was trying to weigh up who can I ring for help, something I really don't want to do. And I'd forgotten that when he started his business, I'd given him my credit cards and said, look, use these, it's all right. And when he answered the phone, I was like, I'm sorry, mate, I really nowhere else to go. I don't want to ask this, but I'm in shit. Like, I can't afford to pay the bills. And he was like, mate, I said, why didn't you ring me sooner? He's like, you help me out. Of course, how much do you need? What do you need? I'll sort it out today. And I cried, literally, at the point. And he did. He transferred the money into the account so I could pay the wages, not just then, but for several months going. And he turned around to me and said, just make the decision that you've been putting off. And his advice, just make the decisions. I knew what he meant as soon as he said it, is I needed to make some redundancies. And I'd never made people redundant before. And it feels like you've failed them. It really feels like when you have to make people redundant, you've failed. And understandably, the ones I made redundant were upset and felt that they weren't valued. And I even remember seeing a couple of social media posts from one in particular that was, where they felt unappreciated, and it was really gutting seeing that. I went, after I'd done it, I left the office and went and I pulled up in a lay-by and I just cried, because these people who are...
But this is the nature, again, in small business. smaller businesses, you are closer to your people. The relationship is more intimate.
Yeah.
Therefore, if that relationship comes to an end, the effect of it is far more keenly felt than perhaps with some enormous great corporate organization where you can, to a degree, park the emotion and just say it's just business.
Yeah.
And that was going on right across the economy at the same time.
Yeah. We actually started experimenting with some of the lessons I learned from UKBF. I started looking back and thinking, why would somebody pay a load of money for a website that doesn't have any revenue? And I turned out there's a lot of money in advertising.
Mm-hmm.
So we started building a platform that allowed companies to position themselves in front of all these businesses that are being set up. And we did a proof of concept. Not that it was officially a proof of concept. As far as it was with Barclays. So as far as Barclays were concerned, we were just introducing new business to us. Mm-hmm. For us, we were testing the market to see if there's an opportunity here, working within their introducer arrangement, and it turned out there was. And we started. And once I got this working and looking like it was going to generate some revenue, I'd invested more in. Really, I don't learn my lessons quickly. We'd come out of the credit crunch. We'd started building up and having some more developers. I'd borrowed, I basically got an overdraft from the bank, and we were literally at breaking point. And we just started to secure some contracts with Lloyd's, with RBS, and then the bank who we were with at the time sent us an email saying we need to close your overdraft. I was like, I've got nothing. The main part there was, even though the money was just hanging on by a thread, very hand to mouth, we'd proven there was a concept there, something that could work. So I did the best I could come up with as a business memorandum to go out to market and get some investors. Because at this point I thought, right, I've sold prior to this a couple of businesses, and they're all okay money, and I'd always thrown it all back into the business. If something was going to be life changing, it'd be this, and I'm not fussed about owning all of it. I keep making a few mistakes. There are things I need to learn. And by now I was very self-aware of where my strengths were and where my weaknesses were. So I needed to bring somebody else in. I didn't want to just buy in consultative support. I actually wanted somebody with a bit of skin in the game. I actually wanted these people to have a share in the business, have an interest in it. And so I went out and met loads of different business angels. And I met so many different characters until eventually settling down with Ben, who's our chairman, and anybody you can walk who employs like 200 people, and you can walk around their organisation and everybody has the utmost respect for the one at the top. I thought, this is somebody I can get behind. Mm-hmm. And the incestuous part of it is actually his company bought UK Business Forums in 8 days. And when that happened,
sure,
he said, if you're ever working on anything else, give me a shout. I'd be interested in knowing. So he was done. As far as I'm concerned, I thought, that's done. We eventually met Adrian. I got introduced to Adrian via Ben as well, because he'd known I was going through. And Adrian shared the same values. And for me, the values are the people. And then I'd said to them, right, this is what I think can be done. This is my plan, where I think we can make a lot of money. Put me an offer forward for however much stake you want in it and for however much you want to put in. And if I like it, great. If I don't, I don't. I was quite loose in that sense. And that's something which stays with me now.
And was that brinkmanship?
Sorry?
Was that brinkmanship? In other words, were you testing the market because you needed the money, but if you were straight with people, people would respond to you? Were you challenging people to come on board to become part of your business?
I didn't believe I needed the money. I was prepared to do it without the money. I wanted somebody who had shared my values, and had the knowledge in the areas that I didn't, and I wanted them to have a stake in the business. And to have a stake in the business involved putting some money in. And I'm a firm believer of you can't set your price. The market drives the price.
Right.
So I could turn around and say, right, I want 100 grand, I want 500 grand, I want 50 grand. Whatever I said is irrelevant, because that's what the business is to me. And just because I think it's worth that much, it doesn't mean it is. And it seemed pointless having any sort of negotiation or waffling around with any of this.
But at this point, equally, you're making your business not solely your business. Now the business is getting bigger than Richard Osborne. This stops being a conversation about Richard Osborne's business, because now you're starting to get corporate.
Yes, and that's a massive lesson for anybody in business, I'd say, because it depends on what you want out of your company. If you want to if the business is always you, the business will always be you. And if ultimately I want to grow this company and eventually hand it over to others, now those others could be management team buyout, it could be an acquirer, it doesn't really matter at this stage, but it has to be more than me.
It sounds to me that from coming from as unorthodox route as you could possibly find to get into business, you now run business on a relatively orthodox basis. You've learnt the lessons that many others do. Now, there's nothing remarkable about that, but as the business develops, when you look at the scale for the business data that you have handled, you are now known as Business Data Group. UK Business Forums was something that you set up with Gary, you took it on, you on-sold it. You've just gone and bought it back. So is that an indulgence of Richard Osborne as a businessman? Where does that fit within the family of Business Data Group? And where does that fit in terms of helping business to do business for the good of the British economy?
So the company we sold it to, for the past few years, about 3 years, they had picked up the phone, sent me an email, and so I got in contact saying we've diversified our business and we moved more into focusing on the accountancy sector. So the small business element of a publication, as they reference it, was no longer relevant to them. So they had contacted me a few times saying, look, do you want to buy him back? And as much as an indulgence I would love to, I'm not the sole shareholder of my business. Whatever I do has to have a clear business plan and purpose for it. And I couldn't think of one. And we'd speak about it at board meetings.
So why did you want it back?
I wanted it back because I could see it wasn't quite, when I owned UK Business Forums in the beginning, it was it was a community that had a certain culture of, we're all in this together, and it's all sort of mucking in and supportive. And also, if you're on there to peer-to-peer support, but also you're there to connect with each other and do business together. And it wasn't quite that way, I think is the best way of putting it, over the last few years. And there was part of me thinking, I could just turn that around. I'm sure I could grab that by the neck and
have another crack at it, do it again.
And I had fond memories of it, but I couldn't justify paying a big chunk of money for it just because I want to. Come on, guys, let me have a little shopping spree. There is I mentioned a moment ago, that element of respect goes both ways.
Of course.
And and I know what I'm going to be challenged on now. So when I go to a board meeting with my pack and all, the plans for the future, the short-term, medium-term, I pretty much know what I'm being challenged with. And now I turn around and said, look, I want to spend on UK Business Forums. Why? God, just do. I know what the challenge will be.
Never going to work.
During the COVID pandemic, we became very aware of how reliant Business Data Group is on the business's startup side of things. So all about what e-filing does. We are known phenomenally within, we dominate the market for people who are setting up in business and you want to reach those people. All those things come together. We don't have any real competition in that area to that size. The COVID pandemic exposed so many areas in so many businesses, and that was the bit exposed for us. At that point, sitting there thinking, we need to complement that. So we've got the businesses that are starting up, of which, you know, there is a lot. What about after they started up and the, you know, the ongoing journey of those businesses as they grow, evolve, sell, close, expand, whatever they do? How can we sort of support and connect with those businesses? It's like, UKBF.
This is symbiosis.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So I sat there and I thought, right, okay, now I'm going to have to justify how this is all going to work. So there's, and I wrote a proper, you know, full business plan that sort of breaks it all down into areas. I focused on the areas which mean a lot to me personally, and then the business justification. So the bits that mean to me personally is the community element. So I've focused on, right, what can UKBF stand for and do for these businesses, and where can I, you know, the bit that excites me, and then, you know, where can we connect with? And we have within Business Data Group tools that, if you imagine, the easiest way to describe it, like Google or Bing ads, where you go and create your campaigns online, you build up, you choose your targeting and messaging and where you want it to be delivered to. We've built a solution that does that within BDG. We can just plug that into UKBF. We have a platform that helps people start their own businesses, e-filing. We could just plug that into UKBF. So we've already got our own tools that we've developed.
So UK Business Forums is a limb of Business Data Group, in the same way that e-filing is a limb of Business Data Group. You've actually now got an animal with different legs in different areas, and all of them are geared towards supporting business.
Yeah.
Do you think about that in terms of supporting the economy? Do you see a bigger picture in that way?
It's in our sales collateral. Yes, it's what the term's used. To me, it doesn't seem. It's almost quite surreal to think of it like that. But yes, we help hundreds of thousands of companies set up every year. We help thousands upon thousands, or, you know, have thousands upon thousands of businesses, 10,000 a day or plus, engaging or using or searching or reading UKBF. It's a huge amount. It's quite cool, is the only way I can think of, to think that we're a little business in Blisworth, a small team, and we do that much. We actually have, you know, that much goes through systems that we build and maintain.
And to extend that still further, if you consider this in an umbrella sense, does that mean that the community that you facilitate through UK Business Forums and Business Data Group, do you feel that is going to shape government thinking for the future, given that we are now through Brexit, the coronavirus pandemic hopefully is receding, but there's all sorts of economic issues that the country has now got to learn from, wrestle with, and move forward from?
I hope so. It's one of the aspirations I have for UKBF, to be able to be that voice for these, you know, small micro business owners, the micro business economy as it develops. I hope so. It's something that I have some experience of doing successfully through BDG. So BDG historically has campaigned government for changes in legislation relating to Companies House, the Companies Act, and how and closing loopholes used for money laundering and corporate crime, and was successful in that. Expanding that further into the challenges facing small businesses. The people have the same issues now they have. The landscape's changed slightly. The way people trade and interact with each other has changed, but ultimately underneath all of it, the issues people have when they start up in business are still the same. And I actually enjoy getting involved in that and doing anything that I can anyway to support that.
That's great insights. And Richard, thank you again. More from Richard Osborne from Business Data Group on our next conversation, when we'll be talking about UK business forums and the future, right here with UKBF.